Convenience sampling. People are invited to participate in a survey or a questionnaire and often offered rewards. The pros of it are it's easy, convenient, and quick. The cons, it's biased, and of course the bias is results can and probably will be invalid. Okay, so this is the scenario. For example, you guys are in an ice cream store, and they invite a bunch of people to do survey in order to get a reward. Of course, they're probably gonna say that they really like the store, but of course, there's the con, right? Over. It's definitely gonna be invalid. Clustered sampling. A small group of a certain population is selected. Pros. This is also an easy method, but the cons is it's also biased. And because of the sheer characteristic of a certain population, it will definitely be biased. As you can see here, for example, there's a certain group of people in a certain area with a certain characteristic. For example, you're in downtown Toronto. They're asking you if you want to get, what kind of car do you want to get? Obviously, because they're in a downtown area, they probably say something like a tiny Suzuki, but of course, if you ask somebody in Saskatchewan, they'd say something bigger or something like an off-road truck or something. Simple random sampling. A specific number of people is chosen from the population at random. This is also an easy method, but because it's random, it's also somewhat reliable. But despite the fact that it's just simple random sampling, it's also biased. And practically one example of a bias is there's a possibility of unreliable results. You might pick out the wrong people, for one. Systematic sampling. A certain person out of a certain number of people is selected. Pros. It's reliable and unbiased, which means there's not a single bias at all. But cons is, if you do not have enough time, then, well, of course. If you do not have enough of this, not a good idea. Stratified sampling. A person identifies each member of a population, then selects a random sample from each group. The pros is it's reliable and unbiased, but the cons is it's time-consuming and one of the hardest methods in the history. Judgment sampling. Similar to convenience sampling, a person non-randomly selects the sample and ensures that the sample is an actual representative. Of course, the pros is this is one of the easiest methods in the world. The cons, it's also one of the most biased, and the bias is, of course, the sampler can cheat. And of course, mistakes are also possible, so I wouldn't count on this method too well. Quota sampling. Similar to stratified sampling, a person identifies the population and each member's proportions in terms of sampling. Then, a sample is selected by judgment. Pros. It's reliable, but also pay attention. It's only partially reliable. The cons, of course, this is one of the worst methods in history because you've got the bias and hard. And of course, the bias is similar to that of the previous method. The sampler can cheat and mistakes are possible. Voluntary sampling. A volunteer sample is used to gather data. Pros, this is by far the world's easiest method to do sampling. And the cons, of course, it's also one of the most biased. And bias is the sample itself can cheat. Who knows? Who knows who's going to do the cheating? It's either the survey holder or the survey member. Snowball sampling. The sample submits referrals to the sampler in order to gather other samples. The pros, it's really easy. Cons, biased, The referrals can be used to change results on purpose. Practically, this method works like an average day snowball. Practically, if you keep on going, it becomes bigger and bigger. Same method works for this snowball sampling. Practically, the sample itself gets bigger and bigger. But of course, there's the bias, and of course, the referrals can be used to change results on purpose, and mostly the sampler would definitely pay these guys to change the results. And that's about it.